YouTube. YouTube, this is FleurBrun coming to you today with a new topic of discussion. I'm not going to do a long-winded video, but I'll wait until people check in. So check on in. It's a beautiful day in Florida. Like the sun is not too much. East, the west, the north, and the south. Check on in. Hey, Marcus. Hi, Laura. Hey, Cinnamon Bun. Cinnamon Bun. That's such a saucy name. Hey, Tim. Hey, Cindy. Hola, Manita. Hey, Lisa. Hey, Cassie. Hey, Elizabeth. Hey, the Chief Boy. Hey, Yellow. Okay. Hey, Adriana. Hey, Darla. Hey, April. The eyes of justice shining into the dawn. Amelia, Tiffany. Hey, Tiffany. Hey, Marcos. Hey, Jennifer. Hey, Pearly Cake. Hey, I'm Golden. Oh, your daughter has the flu. I'm so sorry, my love. I'm sorry. I'm wishing her a speedy recovery, okay? If she has a fever, do some old-fashioned remedies. Can you hear me, guys? Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me? I don't have my headphones on. Can everybody hear me? Okay? Put a 13 if you can hear me. You might have to turn your volume up, hon. So sending love and protection to you and Golden and your little one. And make sure you get some in-house honey. Get some honey that's in season, raw, okay? And give her a little bit of that with some key lime. It'll help a little bit. It's like an antifungal a little bit. And then put some onions on her feet. That's old-fashioned red onions on her feet. So, you can't hear me? How come some people, the sound is muffled? Oh, snap! AI is coming in already. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? There's noise? Every time I do a video, there's like white noise. Wow, this is interesting. I'm going to keep going. Interception. There's nothing in. Every time you come on here, I got static. It might be the dimension. I might say this. It might be the dimension I'm in. Remember, I'm outside of the matrix. Acknowledge that I'm outside. It's too much static. Hold on, family. Does it sound a little better? Maybe because I have it locked in. Is it better? It's not better? Sounds like a wood bowl. This is like every time I do wow. Noisy waves. Wow. It's interesting. I don't have any waterways. I have birds singing. It might be the dimension I'm in. There's no rain, snow, or anything. Yeah. I'm sorry. Can you guys at least hear me somewhat so I can start the conversation? Or do I have to stop the whole feed? I look hazy too? I can't even talk about the holographic people. You want me to get headphones? Okay, hold on. Let me go get headphones. Hold on. Let me get headphones. Hold on, family. Let me go grab my headphones. Okay, I'm going to try to throw some headphones on. Okay, hold on. Wait a minute. For anyone's checking, just put a like on the video as you step in the door. I'm going to try to put headphones on so you guys can hear me a little better, okay? Hold on a second. Hold on. I don't know. I think that's because I'm in another dimension. You guys have been mentioning that you hear this weird noise, but I think I'm not in all of your dimensions. I'm being honest. When you say things like that, it makes me think. Hold on, I'll put my headphones on. Hey, I'm Golden. Okay. You guys can tell me in a minute if you can hear me better. Okay. Tell me if you hear me. Do you guys hear me? Do you hear me better? Put a 13 if you can hear me better. It's better? Yay! Doop doop, yay! Okay, so I'll do my headphones. FleurBrun coming to today in another dimension. So check on in, put a handy dandy like in the video. I got, my handy dandy headphones on so you can hear me a little better. Okay. So we're going to go in. Hey, Quantum Sensei. So we're going to go into the topic of holographic people. Okay. And we're going to talk about pre-scripted DNA. Okay. This is a very quantified discussion as we are seeing the world as the matrix collapses. We have the collapsing of the different timelines, the various timelines. And this also allows for the hologram to kind of descend a little bit or recede. Okay. And with the receding of the hologram that we are all interfacing with, this, if you come to me for the first time, I perceive this reality as a holographic system that we're interfacing with, that is made up of a multitude of codes, basic uh, 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 binary codes. Okay. And I think you remember a couple years ago when I had that whole stint, like when I was raising, like I was shooting up to the stars in my vibration, and I started to see the binary codes show up. I just saw it for like 2 seconds or 3 seconds. I actually had a chance. And if you haven't any idea what I'm talking about, check out the movie Lucy, which some of you may have seen. And it actually talks about her DNA being activated, all these latent forms of her DNA being activated, and how she, at each level and layer of her her leveling up, she was able to interface with the actual binary system and binary codes, and kind of move it aside and kind of see it and see what she wanted to be able to designate a place, a person, or what have you. Okay. And you kind of see that in the movie The Matrix, when you see when they go into coming Morpheus, Neo, and Trinity, when they enter into the holographic system, the Matrix, the others who are on the Nebuchadnezzar, they're looking at them in the matrix through the layering of binary codes. Okay, so we have the same thing with the holographic people, and as we have a condensing and the layering effect is receding, you're starting to notice the holographic people a little bit more. And we're going to talk about pre-scripted DNA. And what I mean about pre-scripted DNA, this is DNA that has been co-created with, eugenicists, the happy dandy Nazis, and along with another dark Kabbalist, Willy Wonka and his League of Doom. They have made it a point to hyper illuminate DNA and, to promote and to propaganda chaotic mating, which allows for easier receptivity to 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 allowing for certain types of beings who have more of a lessening of coding around their cells, that allows for more inception, especially when we're going in the realm of massive amount of technology and sound frequency. Big up to all those who are in contact with the Arcturians. Many of you who are contactees of the Arcturians, actually, you know this more than anyone, because you know the Arcturians work in the realm of light and sound frequency. A lot of our intergalactic family, extraterrestrial family, work in the realm of frequency, sound frequency, and light frequency. And if you know this, you know that it can also alter your DNA. And some beings on this planet are more susceptible to infiltration via the fact that their DNA is very tampered, homogenized, and they're more susceptible to infiltration via sound frequency or altering or inbreeding with the same type of very uh, non how can I say this? Very weak DNA. Okay, so this is why you'll see a lot of the dark Kabbalists, you'll see a lot of the queens. You remember back in the days when you had the kings and queens and they were mating and they mated with their cousins, and they mated with their own DNA. It's because why they did that is it because it allowed for a their bodies, their vessels that were produced via, through birthing, to be more of an open vessel to allow for entities to enter into those body spaces, because that DNA was more allotted and more susceptible, more like a portal, like an open portal. Clones are like this. Clones have less dexterity. We have beings that have been genetically homogenized. A lot of the beings you see who are interfacing in your world right now, who haven't any idea that the world is collapsing, they see everything, they hear everything, and they basically agree, they kind of go along with the algorithm of society. Thank you, Elijah. I appreciate it. Thank you, and Golden. And Golden, I want to stay on topic, love. Tamiflu, I want to stay on topic because that's something, I can't keep going off the riff. Tamiflu is not something I agree with. It does work for certain people, so um, we probably would have to have a private conversation. Okay, I want to kind of leave the conversation kind of geared towards that. So I'm not ignoring you. I just want to stay focused. Okay. So you have people who have more questionable, more DNA that is less quantified as having the dexterity to be able to protect itself from the inception of sound frequency, light frequency, and also, allowing to have walk-in or entities actually take over the vessel. Okay, so a lot of times, there's a lot of the queens and kings that interbreed, and why they do that is it allows their DNA stays more quantified with a specific quality that allows for better inception of certain types of deities that intend to take over that vessel or to attach to it to allow for infiltration or influence. Okay, so it's the same with the basic beings that we interface with on planet Earth. We have a lot of beings that have been homogenized and what I call prescripted DNA, which you have certain society, a lot of the times in the Midwest, whenever you have a small group of people that kind of eat and breed, stay within the same genomes, have a less qualified quantity of melanin over the cells because melanin protects the cells. It allows for infiltration and susceptibility to all types of sound frequency alterations or light frequency sequencing that changes the very cap or the consciousness of those beings. Okay, so it's very necessary. That's, when people say, what do you mean by this? When many of you are clinicians or scientists or doctors, when we work in laboratories, a lot of times we will work with white rats that have pink eyes. Same, the same with the pink-eyed chickens that you guys work with white feathers, and turkeys that have white feathers and pink eyes. Those aren't natural. Those are not natural organisms. They've been altered and homogenized. And people say, well, I always have to remind people, if they've done it with your food, what makes you think they haven't done it with the populace? Okay. They can homogenize the populace without you knowing. They geoengineer your food. So every time you eat food that is non-quantified as organic or heirloom, they can basically alter your DNA. So if you eat genetically homogenized food, every time you take that in your body, it has a way of altering the sequence of your DNA if you eat it a lot. Okay, so if you eat, seedless fruit, I always tell people you eat a lot of seedless things. There isn't anything in nature that's seedless or fruitless. You know what I mean? As trees that are fruitless are barren. Okay, um, uh, any seedless fruit or vegetable, things that have seeds, that means it's been homogenized. That means that when your body won't recognize it because it isn't in its natural heirloom form, and it will start to alter itself in order to to digest it. And after you keep eating homogenized food, you actually become more of a homogenized person. Why do you think they've been geoengineering the wheat for so long? So, all this time, there are people back in the days, many of you who suffer from celiac disease or a sensitivity to gluten. Many of you have, myself, I get inflammation from having basic breads, grains. I'm allergic to grains. The durum wheat that they've homogenized. We don't even talk about the cancer spike, and most people don't realize that cancer is a type of fungus. And why most people are getting cancer more so than back in the days is because not only are they suffering from diabetes, the third stage of diabetes, which they don't even tell you you have, you also are getting funguses that are on the rice, the grains that are in those big mills. So every time you get those grains and you make, breads out of them in those big mills that you see. Anybody live in the Midwest or somewhere in the country where you see those big mills and they hold a multitude of corn and grain. Corn and wheat are very susceptible to a sporish infiltration or fungi. infiltration. And it doesn't always look like the brown, some fungi, because there isn't enough oxygen, sometimes it'll turn white and you won't notice that there's fungus on your thing. That's why some of the West Indians, big up to the West Indians and some of the other family, we wash our rice. I don't eat a lot of rice. My mother raised me on a lot of rice, but you should be washing your rice, because why you wash your rice, I never realized why my mother did it, is because the rice has not only a heightened amount of, salmonella, it has a little bit of salmonella, but it also has some fungi or some fungus on it, some spores that come from the milling. Okay. So you can research this, go and look at it. Yeah, we always wash our rice, and soak it and just make sure you clean it, because you want to make sure you aren't eating that. But it's hard to do that with the wheat unless you're processing your own wheat. And many of us are codependent on grocery stores and outer sources. And we aren't like the Amish or some of the more procured tribal-based people who actually grow their own grain, and then they wash it, and then they mill it themselves. They kind of use the mortars. And you remember that? You use the mortars, you crush it. I do it with spelt. Sometimes I'll do it with the spelt grain. If I buy raw spelt, the spelt seedlings, I mortar it myself, and I'll make my own spelt if I want to do that. But if you aren't doing that and you're buying that in grocery stores, a lot of your grains are infiltrated with a lot of, spores, latent spores, and those spores get into your body. And if you eat a multitude of that, along with high fructose syrup that allows it to bond to your, to a lot of your, it bonds to your almost like cholesterol does. It kind of goes into your arteries and it binds to the fungi. And when you have an overrun of fungi, because when we look under the microscope, when I've looked under the microscope and look at cancer, it looks like a fungus. It looks like a white porous mushroom. Okay. And how we know how to resolve that, even though I'm not a doctor, let me state this. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a referee. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a practitioner. I'm not a witch. I'm not a wizard. I am a mother and a contactee. And these are the things I'm sharing for what I know to be just in living in my life. So I just want to state that and put that out there. What I share is what I know, what I've researched on myself, the people I are a key with, the wonderful plethora of phenomenal researchers and intellects that and doctors and naturopathic and homeopathic people that I've had the pleasure of being a party to and being French, having wonderful liaisons over the many years. Okay. This is my specialty, and many of you know me from back in the days. This is what I can talk and quantify and speak about. So I don't want to get on cancer, but we're going to homogenized bees. But this is why many of your foods, if you aren't growing it yourself, you should really take in consideration. Like I've talked to you before, every time, FleurBrun bulks up, you could tell I've been eating grains, and it could just be a slice of bread. And back in the days, many of you would have Wonder Bread and your bodies didn't reject it. You didn't get, irritable bowel syndrome. You didn't have gluten sensitivity because the grains were more, clear. The grains were more, more wholesome, less genetically homogenized. And also there wasn't that the milling and the type of chemicals that they utilized to mill weren't present. So you didn't have as many funguses present. Okay. So just take that in notation. A lot of times with cancer, it can basically be treated with antifungals and also taking away the acidity and sugar in your diet. We always talk to people who have cancer, and this is one of the things. Remember, my father passed away not of cancer. We actually beat the cancer, but it was some of the medication that they gave my father previous that actually killed his heart and weakened his heart. So I was able to assist my father with getting rid of the cancer cells, but sometimes it hampers your system. So sugar is one of those things. Cane sugar is not a healthy sugar, and again, sugar is a form of drug, and it also helps. A lot of our diabetes and all this craziness comes from cane sugar. If you do maple sugar, if you can tolerate date sugar, if you could just stay away from sugar, period. Sweetness is not always the case. You can get sweetness from other things, or you eat plain cane. We back in the days in the West Indies, we ate cane, sugar cane. Many of you drink sugar cane. My father drank sugar cane. We drank a lot of sugar cane, and he never had a cavity. When he came to the United States, was the first time my father ever had a cavity at 21. He didn't have a cavity the entire time. When he was in the West Indies, when he came to the States, he got his first cavity, and this is from the processed dense grains and sugars that are all in the foods. Okay, so Let's just say that. And any surface funguses that you have on your skin, that really has to do with stomach issues. My little one, many of you talk about the struggle with my little one, and that had to do with some of the things that went on when she was first born. So the skin funguses, I have a wonderful thing that I just use with her. I'm going to put it on Instagram. I think it's called, I have the picture of it. I think I put it on Instagram. It's a topical thing. It's really expensive, like $58. It kind of uh, gets rid of the spores. A lot of this is fungus. All the skin issues, psoriasis, and all that stuff, it's the gut issues. A lot of gut issues, interruptions in the gut, a lot of bad bacteria, non-balanced guts cause a lot of skin issues. Okay, and also anger, unresolved issues, pain, sadness. Those are all the metaphysical things. Okay, all right. So, family, let's go into the pre-scripted DNA and the holographic people that are, basically, I personally think most of the majority of people, this is my own opinion, majority of people on this earth aren't real. And when I say they aren't real, I'm not just saying that they're holographic people or clones. I'm saying that I think the majority of people are basically either shape-shifting entities that are cloaking themselves in order to disillusion you, to allow you to see them in the way that they denote. Once you see a lot of grays here, the grays have a whole different agenda, which I can't even vet out. Okay, so we have grays, and a lot of your gray overlays are on your phone. And now, with the heightened amount of technology, along with the assistance of 5G, you have the holographic people having a much more strong presence and a less susceptibility. They'll tend to they'll recede a little bit as we get closer to the pole shift. But right now, yeah, they're soulless. When it's soulless means you aren't connected to the Akashic records. But pre-scripted humans are also soulless. Okay, so let's talk about the pre-scripted humans first, and then we'll talk and touch on the holographic beings. Okay, so pre-scripted humans are genetically homogenized beings. These were co-created by your handy dandy Willy Wonka. These are people that have procreated and created generations of capped conscious people. They're high. Sometimes you'll notice them. They're highly religious. They're unable. They think Jesus Christ is their Lord and personal Savior. They're suffering from a heightened amount of what you call it? They're suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, the classic case of Stockholm Syndrome. A lot of those people are capped beings, capped consciously. They've been homogenized generationally. So you'll see a lot of them, like you'll see a lot in the Ashkenazi. I don't want to attack. This isn't an attack. This is my notable observation with the Ashkenazi community. That's a very small community where there's a lot of inbreeding of the same genomes. They tend to inbreed. Generally, their blood types come from A negative to B negative. Sometimes a variants of AB negative, but usually they're A negative. I've seen that more so. Someone can correct me on that. I have the research on that. The Ashkenazi community has a cap consciousness. That's why sometimes it's even hard for them to see or have empathy for others. They have a seemingly cold disposition, very far removed, very biobotic and robotic response, very stoic belief system, very non-evolving system. Also, we don't want to just limit that to the Ashkenazis. I talk about it because it's a smaller niche, and I can give you more of an example. We have Christianity, especially in the Bible Belt, where you have tons of people that have been genetically homogenized. They are limited, consciously. They have a tendency to use religious statements verbatim, and they have a perpetual, kind of like looping. Personalities. They loop all the time. They kind of do the same things over and over again. They're very ritualistic in their pattern of behavior. They're limited as far as seeing anything that's outside of their spectrum of indoctrination as anything true or valid to them, even to the point where they will allow children to be killed or die because they don't believe in certain things to assist in the health or the healthy cohesion of their own children. Okay, so these are a lot. That's an example of some of the capped and homogenized humans that are utilized in the system as a way to keep pushing. They push the agenda. Okay, that kind of limitation and that kind of limited conscious and awareness allows for the agenda to keep going, because remember, the goal of the matrix is to keep you limited and allow you to be mindless and susceptible to being motivated to do and act in ways to service their agendas. Okay, and because of that, a lot of times you have these limited cap beings being in the forefront of a lot of political agendas. Okay, so why do you think that Israel is really protected by the United States of America because you have it headed by very limited rabbis and very stoic individuals that are part of the Ashkenazi, kind of like the Khazar Jewish sect, who are very limited, very prejudiced, and very biased. If you don't believe it, go look at their society and see how they treated some of the Sephardic Jews or some of the Ethiopians that they came and brought over there in order to try to expand their DNA because their DNA was collapsing. They were literally being born with a lot of alterations and malgarations in their very DNA. The dexterity of their DNA was collapsing. Once you inbreed so much, you start to get variances in the DNA that show up as, all kinds of, genetic abnormalities. Okay. And they did this as a way to try to expand it. But at the same point, they're very uniformed in their behavior patterns. They don't really like anything other than selves. So by them bringing over the actually Sephardic Jews over from Yemen and from Ethiopia, it actually, it actually made these poor people, Jewish people from over there, susceptible to all kinds of heinous behavior because captive individuals have no empathy. So you can see videos, if you look at some of the videos of some of the Ashkenazi males, mostly males, because they're cap consciously beating up on a brown woman in the middle of the street, calling her, some negative derogatory names in Hebrew and kicking her and beating her, a woman. But yet, in the religious faith, a lot of times, religious faith, you're supposed to respect women. You're supposed to uphold them because they are the holy mothers, so they don't even see the very people that they brought over there to try to expand their DNA as human. And even though they're mating with them forcibly. Okay. So, that's a very small populace. You see cop consciousness. You see a lot of times they have a very limited mindset. DNA wise, you can actually look in their eyes and actually see nothing there. Okay. Those are cap conscious people. Now it's just not limited to the Ashkenazi Orthodoxy Jews. That's also part of the Midwest. You see, again, in the Bible Belt, there's a lot of people who are cap consciously. These are people very limited. Those are the ones who have very narrow-minded conceptions of reality. Those are the ones who are always watching Super Bowls. They obsess with very archaic forms of interfacing in their very environment. These are the capped. These are the pre-scripted human beings. These are the ones that are genetically homogenized. These are the ones that aren't here for the ascension process because once you are pre-scripted, you haven't any connection to the Akashic records. Actually, you have zero connection to the Akashic records. Why they can be so cold, and these are the same beings that used to chop off people's heads, hang women in the middle of the street, the people who used to have church meetings and hang brown people at lunch at a church meeting and have their children watching. These are beings that are not human. They aren't human in the sense that they have a conscious, ethical, moral compass that comes from having access to the Akashic records. Only souls have access to the Akashic records. Those who have been genetically homogenized haven't any connection to source. So because of that, they haven't any moral compass to kind of guide them or give them a sense of guilt or responsibility or accountability for the very behavior or lack of healthy behavior that they may be engaging with or allowing others to engage in. Okay, so that has a lot to do with that. They're cap consciously. And when you hear me say that, it means that they haven't any soul. Okay, soul makes you accountable. Even if you're naughty and you're nasty, your soul will make you feel guilty. Your soul will also make you more accountable karmically. So if you have a soul, you have more karmic debt because if you do something naughty or good, you will have hold on, I think I have a package. Hold on. Hold on, family. Hold on, wait a minute. Okay. Like these cat consciousness, they don't even know I'm here. Accountability is everything. So, hi, how are you? It's very necessary for someone, even if someone's doing naughty things or someone's murdered someone, you can go into the prison systems and see people who are capped or not. People who are capped consciously don't have